The Boss SL-2 slicer is an effect that lets you mangle your signal by chopping it up into a bunch of slices and then reorganizing those slices into different rhythmic patterns. It's actually an updated version of a previous Boss product called the SL-20. And in this video, I'm going to show you what I think are the 5 coolest things you can do with the new pedal. The SL-2 has lots of different modes, but the core of the pedal comes down to 2 knobs, attack and duty. Attack is how abrupt the onset of every slice is, so like the snappiness of it all, and duty represents the length of every slice. Regardless of how you set the rest of the pedal and what you're using it to do, I think how you set those 2 knobs is sort of the crucial decision. And I also think those 2 knobs have a sweet spot, which is setting the attack knob around here, so pretty snappy, and setting the duty knob around here, so pretty short. You can pick whichever rhythm you want from the variation knob, but if you set attack and duty like this, what you get from just a clean guitar input will be a very distinct synthesizer-like sound that I think is very usable. In the example you just heard, a big part of why it sounded like a synthesizer more than a guitar is that those slices were so short that you could hear the pitch, but you couldn't really make out the fact that it was a guitar note because the slices were going by too quickly. There was like almost not enough information to hear the timbre. You can still use the slicer to make your guitar sound like a synthesizer with longer duty cycles, especially because they have modes that will apply other effects in addition to doing the slicing up. But if you do that, I think there's a technique that can help it sound more authentically like a synthesizer than a guitar, which is to use hybrid picking or finger picking in addition to just strumming with the pick. And the reason is, if you think about somebody playing a keyboard synthesizer, it's very easy to play all the notes of a chord at the same time. You just push your fingers down together. But on a guitar, if you strum, that's actually not what's happening. Even if you strum quickly, the first string you strum will give the note of the chord before the next string you strum. And even though that's a subtle difference, a big part of what makes any instrument sound like what it is the information contained right on the onset of every note. So with the longer duty cycle, I think you can more convincingly sound like a synthesizer on your guitar if you, instead of just strumming with a pick, use your available fingers to pluck the high note of every chord. So you strum the bottom of the chord and pluck the high part of the chord with your fingers at the same time, so it sounds more like the entire chord is being played at the same time the way a keyboard player would do it. It took me a long time to explain that, but the point is just that I think it makes a subtle but crucial difference. I said before that the slicer has different effects it can run in addition to the slicing, and some of those other effects are pitch shifters, which means you can turn the slicer into a drum machine just by running noise into it and choosing a mode that'll run different pitch shifters. In the example you're about to hear, I'm using the OP1 synthesizer as my noise source. So if I push any key, it just does this. But if I play a note and hold it down and then run it into the slicer with these settings, it will become a drum machine. The next pro tip is just set the tempo at maximum and also set the attack at maximum, and then run that into a distortion pedal or an already overdriven amp. You could pick whichever mode and whichever rhythm you want, but it's not going to make a huge difference. The point is just that much choppiness at that speed run into distortion sort of becomes its own thing. You might be thinking that you can sort of do this with a fast tremolo pedal too, and you sort of can, but the truth is that the slicer with maximum attack has fangs that tremolo pedals don't have. You can make your slices like artificially intense in a way that I don't think happens with tremolo pedals. So do that into distortion, and that has its own vibe. The next pro tip is run a reverb into the slicer and set the reverb so that it's just fully wet, so that there's only reverb coming out of the pedal. There's none of your original signal. The reason that's cool is that the way the reverb will bloom, the way the notes will sort of grow as they get sliced up by the pedal is extremely cool. And even better is to use a shimmer reverb. That's any reverb that is doing pitch shifting too. That'll just add to the glory of the slicer and how artificial it all sounds. Even better would be a shimmer reverb that can do perfect fifths. I feel like normally the standard shimmer reverb is octaves, and that'll sound good too. But if you can get your hands on a shimmer reverb that'll do perfect fifths, that is the real jackpot. Astral Destiny from Earthquaker Devices can do it. NightSky from Strymon can do it. You can make your own just by running a pitch shifter into a reverb. I use the synthesizer version 2 from Alexander Pedals. If you can just get a shimmer reverb with perfect fifths and run it into the slicer, that'll be the best thing you ever did.